Welcome to Being There, Slow Art at the Modern. In this presentation, we will take some time to look at Andy Warhol's 25 Colored Marilyns from 1962 in the Modern's permanent collection. We will begin by looking at the work itself and pointing out what most viewers see when encountering the piece for the first time. Next, we will discuss the silkscreen process Warhol used to make the piece. Blake Gopnik, whose new biography, Warhol, was recently published, states that Warhol insisted that the idea behind a work of art mattered more than its appearance. Once an artist did his mental work, what happens in the studio is just manual labor. So finally, we will attempt to ascertain what Warhol may be saying in this work about Marilyn Monroe, the idea behind the work. Warhol once said, "I want to be as famous as the Queen of England." And an art dealer once advised him to find something that's recognizable to almost everybody. Something like a can of Campbell's Soup. Well, by the time Warhol died in 1987, he was certainly famous, and he would be forever associated with Campbell's Soup cans. Marilyn Monroe took her life on August 5th, 1962, the day after Warhol's first solo show ended at the Ferris Gallery in Los Angeles. The show featured Warhol's pop art images of 32 cans of Campbell's Soup. 32 because that was the number of different soups Campbell's made in 1962. Warhol projected pictures of the cans on canvas and painstakingly painted each can. However, by August of 1962, he began to adapt the silkscreen process, frequently used in advertising. He loved silkscreening because it was an easy way to reproduce images, and that process was used to make 25 Colored Marilyns. Well, here is the Modern's 25 Colored Marilyns from 1962, acquired by the museum in 1983 from the collection of Vernon Nicol. Thanks to ongoing research being conducted by fellow docents Don Liu and Bix Barentine, we know that Nicol purchased the 25 Colored Marilyns from the Dwan Gallery in Los Angeles in 1962, together with Roy Lichtenstein's Mr. Bellamy, also in the Modern's permanent collection. Vernon Nicol was a postman in Clovis, New Mexico, and an early collector of what has become known as pop art. Nicol kept both the Warhol and the Lichtenstein in his small bedroom, with the Warhol placed in front of his closet. So every time he had to get into the closet, he had to move the painting. This perhaps accounts for the smudges on the bottom of the piece. The smudges are not easy to see on the slide, but are visible when you see 25 Colored Marilyns in the museum. One of the first things we notice about the piece is its grid structure, clearly evident in the upper left-hand corner, and its repetition. We also notice the garish colors the artist is using, what one critic called Warhol's lipstick and peroxide palette, a sense of color which makes all previous palettes look European. As we continue to examine the piece, we notice that the grid is not centered on the canvas, but skews to the left. We also notice that each of the Marilyns is slightly different. In some, the eyeshadow is off register, and sometimes this is the case with the lipstick, skin tone, and hair color. In addition, the inking of Marilyn's image is irregular, producing 25 slightly different variations of the movie star's face. Some people may wonder why Warhol chose Marilyn Monroe. From an early age, he was obsessed with movie stars, and their pictures covered the walls of his childhood bedroom. And Marilyn was certainly a movie star, a celebrity, and a sex symbol. When Marilyn died in 1962, Warhol says, "I got the idea to make screens of her beautiful face." He made over 20 Marilyn paintings in the 5 months between her death and the end of 1962. For his Marilyn image, Warhol chose an 8 by 10 black and white publicity photo from the 1953 film noir thriller Niagara, one of 20th Century Fox's biggest box office hits that year. And unlike other film noirs, this film was filmed in Technicolor rather than in black and white. And Warhol certainly gives us a Technicolor Marilyn in this work. He cropped the photo, as we see here, and transferred it to a screen. According to Warhol, with silkscreening, you pick a photograph, blow it up, transfer it in glue onto silk, and roll ink across it so the ink goes through the silk, but not through the glue. That way, you get the same image, slightly different, each time. 25 Colored Marilyns consists of paint and ink on canvas. Warhol began by painting the canvas gray and then painting a series of blue rectangles. Using different screens for each color, with the sections through which the paint should not flow masked off, the colors of the hair, lips, eyeshadow, and skin were applied. Finally, the cropped image of Marilyn, which had been transferred to a silk screen, was inked on top of the colors using a squeegee. The off registration and the amount of ink and pressure on the squeegee produced different degrees of clarity, resulting in an artificial, mask-like effect. And the silkscreen process flattened the already two-dimensional photo. Let's see what the repetition Warhol uses in this piece might represent. Many have noticed that the repetitive grid resembles a photographer's contact sheet or a series of film strips placed side by side, a nod perhaps to Marilyn's status as a movie star. When the image is repeated over and over again, the viewer can sense the depersonalization associated with mass production, and perhaps become desensitized to the real woman behind the image. Norma Jean was a manufactured star whose name was changed to the more melodious Marilyn Monroe, and the roles she played certainly tended to be one-dimensional. But repetition can also lead to idolization, and many movie stars are idolized by the public, achieving saint-like status. When we look at the bright, hard-edged colors Warhol has chosen to use in this piece, we notice that they serve to enhance the emotional flatness and heighten the artificial quality of the images. Marilyn's hair is especially interesting and reminds many of the icons of Christian saints found in Byzantine Catholic churches. Warhol was raised in the Byzantine Catholic tradition and was said to attend the Byzantine Church regularly. In Byzantine art, icon figures were represented in a manner that emphasized their holiness rather than their humanity, and they had standardized facial expressions. Colors were symbolically important. Gold represented the divine nature of God, and blue represented human life. Warhol might be emphasizing Marilyn's iconic status as a movie star in this piece, with her halo-like golden hair. But by positioning her against the blue ground, he is hinting that even though idolized by her fans, she is a human being as well. Finally, let's look at the way in which Marilyn's image is inked over the colors, hair, lips, eyeshadow, and skin, previously screened onto the canvas. It would have been possible for Warhol to adjust the registration so that each image was exactly like the previous one, but he chose not to do so. He also chose to not completely clean the squeegee before applying ink again, and chose to use different pressures when applying the ink. As we've mentioned earlier, this resulted in aspects of each image being slightly off register, and the ink on skin, hair, lips, and eyeshadow produced different degrees of clarity. Since the grid is not placed in the center of the canvas, but is off-center, the piece is not meant to be a formal portrait. The artificiality of the image is intended, and may suggest to the viewer that Warhol is making a reference to a society in which people can be seen as products, as commodities, rather than as real people. This is especially true for people we idolize, and was certainly the case with Marilyn Monroe. As Blake Gopnik, referenced earlier in this presentation, explains, despite the fool that Warhol liked to play, his conceptual intelligence is what makes him matter. He's the most brilliant person I've ever met, and he never forgets a thing, recalled Susie Frankfurt, a friend who met Warhol in the 1950s. But he comes on as really stupid. Well, thank you for spending some time getting to know Warhol's 25 Colored Marilyns a bit better. And we look forward to seeing you in the museum soon.